Deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. An inquiry is underway after two cabinet ministers admitted they've been targeted by hoax phone calls. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says an imposter posing as the Ukrainian Prime Minister was able to reach him on the telephone, a move he's described as Russian dirty tricks. Meanwhile, Home Secretary Priti Patel has revealed she was also a target last week. She described the incident as a pathetic attempt to divide us. P&O Ferries have made hundreds of staff redundant in what company officials say is a bid to save the operator. 800 staff were fired with immediate effect via video message after the firm made losses of £100 million. The announcement led to protests in Dover and staff refused to leave a P&O ferry in Hull. Transport Minister Robert Courts told the Commons the way workers were informed of job losses was completely unacceptable.
These are hard-working, dedicated staff who have given years in service to P&O. The way they have been treated today is wholly unacceptable. Reports of workers being given zero notice and escorted off their ships with immediate effect, while being told cheaper alternatives would take up their roles, shows the insensitive way in which P&O have approached this issue.
In Ukraine, Mariupol's city council says around 30,000 people have now managed to leave the besieged city. It comes as the Red Cross called on Russia to allow civilians a safe passage out and for aid to be brought in. Ukrainian officials say over 350,000 people are still sheltering there. The Premier League fixture between Newcastle and Everton was interrupted for several minutes this evening as a protester tied himself by the neck to a goalpost. The game was halted just 5 minutes after kick-off as a man wearing a Stop Oil T-shirt stormed the field. He was only removed after half a dozen people and bolt cutters were deployed. A group claiming responsibility say the government is betraying us by funding new oil fields in the North Sea. And the first family selfie has been released showing Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, her husband Richard and 7-year-old daughter Gabriella. The image was posted by the family's MP Tulip Siddiq. She described the couple as relentless in their pursuit of justice, revealing they'd already raised the plight of another detainee in Iran, Morad Tabaz. Nazanin returned to the UK in the early hours of this morning after being detained for 6 years in Iran. Well, on TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, Ian Stone and Josh Howie. Gentlemen.
Hello, mate.
How are you? You all right?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Doing great, yeah.
Marvellous. And you, Josh?
I'm amazing.
You look as ever two peas in a pod, two very close variants on the left-wing hand-wringing mob that we have to employ here for a bit of balance. We have 23 hours of full-on hard-right populism on this channel.
Well,
and
you
then
just
I
wait.
have to wrangle some balance.
Here we are. Here we are to tell you how it is.
You're going to be honest, decent and fair, aren't you? That's all we expect.
And kind.
Any of those?
Kind, very kind. kind.
Oh, right,
Gently
okay.
satiric
Yeah.
at all times. Well, it looks like we have got a little bit of a break in the overwhelming grey cover that has obliterated sunshine from the news landscape. There's one or two quite jolly stories to deal with this evening.
I know it's not as much COVID as normal. In fact, no COVID.
No COVID, no, that's very 20 minutes ago, I can tell you. We haven't been worried about that for quite some time. Let's take a look at the headlines. The front page of the Daily Mail kicks us off. Mutiny on the P&O Ferries. That is quite an exciting story we'll be dealing with very soon. And also the Daily Mail relishing the BBC's embarrassment, shame and squirming over the Martin Bashir outrages, which has possibly finally reached its final conclusion. Russians target Patel and Wallace with fake video calls. That's the headline on the Daily Telegraph. Patel and Wallace, not a new plasticine animation team. They are, in fact, senior members of the government, of the cabinet. And there is a very anxious-looking young lady there who is hoping to escape the war, I assume. Full Russian attack on Kiev may never happen, and outrage at sacking of 800 P&O staff. That is the double from the Independent, and there's also Jess Phillips there in the top rank. She's one of their columnists these days, Jess Phillips, and she says that, I like this headline, it says cyber flashing is not just a joke, suggesting that it is at least that, but much more besides. The Guardian runs with Putin accused of war crimes as school and theatre are hit. Despicable behaviour from the Russian forces today, it would appear. We will be taking a look at that very shortly. A much more cheerful story there, though, illustrated the return of Nazanin, which we covered last night. She is finally reunited with her husband, who seems to have developed some quite interesting sunburn. I don't know whether he was taking the opportunity while he was hoping to sort of get bronzed up for his new photo calls, and it's all gone a bit weird and wrong. But anyway, never mind, they're happy. The Financial Times goes with P&O halts ferry crossings and sacks 800 sailors via a Zoom call. That is, was it Phil Collins who got divorced via text? I think this has upped the stakes a little bit from that. Or was it by fax? That might have been. I forget these various. It was Russell Brand who got divorced by text and Phil Collins who did it by fax. But I think this is even more despicable. An HR disaster at the very least. Band of mothers, 227 Ukrainian children, many orphans, rescued by heroic group of mums. That's from the Daily Mirror. And they also have a single headline, scum, top left, which I assume is the management rather than the people who've taken control of the ferry in protest. Ukraine takes fight to Putin. That's the next headline. Who's that from? That's The Times. And DVLA staff watch TV in bed as backlog mounted. As a sort of smaller scale version of the parties at number 10 has reached Swansea by the look of it. Now we have the Metro goes with mutiny on P&O Ferries. And that was the headline. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at what's inside. So first up, from Friday's Guardian and many other papers, a depressingly familiar refrain and probably the least potential comic material from this, Ian, further outrages from the Russian forces.
Yeah, not a lot of comedy here. Vladimir Putin has been accused of war crimes as a school and theatre are hit in the Ukraine. I mean, I guess it depends what they're showing in the theatre, doesn't it, really?
It's, well, as Sheridan Morley once said, falling asleep is a form of criticism, but this seems a bit extreme.
It's grim. It's grim. Liz Truss said there was now a very, very strong evidence of war crimes being committed by Russian forces. I mean, Vladimir Putin.
The factor would be whether they deliberately do it or whether they didn't take sufficient. Whether they will say they were targeting military.
I think, what they said was that anyone who bombs healthcare facilities, particularly that is specific, in any conflict, attacks on healthcare are a violation of international humanitarian law. I mean, what I would say about Vladimir Putin is that through Bashar al-Assad, he used barrel bombs in Syria. That, I imagine, would be against civilians. That would probably be a war crime as well. But it's about proving it, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, even when they were bombing that maternity hospital, which was about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, there were lots of very distressing pictures of women coming out on stretchers, and there were stories of maternity equipment covered in rubble and all the rest of it. But there was suggestions that also some Ukrainian forces had taken up positions within that building.
Suggestions from where, though?
Oh, well, yeah. I think reasonably well documented.
What, Russia Today?
Well, You say that, but I don't think you can't effectively distinguish what's right and wrong on a lot of these.
In this case, in the theatre, they had painted outside on the ground children, so that any bombers flying overhead, and they'd paint it in Russian, so they would know this is where children were, and they still did it. 43 attacks on healthcare facilities in the Ukraine. That wasn't just what happened, like one-off incident. This is part of their policy, and it's exactly what they did in Syria. So this
Can I ask you, but
and
in terms of
Chechnya
Syria
as well, by the way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Chechnya.
I remember in Syria, I think it was 2014, there was a gas attack in Syria, and there was a vote in the House of Commons as to whether or not to respond to this, with like sending jets over, and Obama was keen to do so as well. And Ed Miliband basically defeated the government on that.
I think that was their lowest moment, Labour Party. I think it was.
How did you feel about it at the time?
I was angry.
Were you?
Yeah,
Were you?
because there was basically pretty much definitive proof that he had used poison gas on his own population, and because of Iraq. There was this unwillingness to actually engage with it, and it was weakness. Yeah,
well, that is the point, though. Iraq did not go well, so there was unwillingness to engage.
But when you let people get away with poisoning their own population and you don't actually do anything about it,
there was, perhaps more to the point, there was a precedent set by Blair under those conditions, which demanded that there be parliamentary consensus rather than just governmental consensus at that point.
It turns out it was a mistake. It turns out it was definitely a mistake, because if you draw a red line and then let someone just trample over it, then therefore it's going to happen again, and it's happening again, and let's see what happens this time.
A lot of people are saying that was like the precedent that was set, and that was when Putin established a sort of a right of his, like the heckler's veto, I suppose, in a sense. Whoever's willing to be the most outrageous, it's understood in gangland.
Well, it seems like the West is finding its backbone a little bit again. So,
well, because it's happening only 2 hours from here, as opposed to in the Middle East or somewhere.
Yeah.
Josh, you could have a story that could come from the golden age of sail by comparison. This is rather a romantic incident. It seems a man who's been to Hull and back and has taken control of the situation.
Yeah, so P&O have fired 800 of their employees on Zoom, and one of the captains has basically locked himself and the crew on a ship. Supposedly that's legal because maritime law is that if you are the captain of a ship, even if you're in dock, you can still say who comes on board, so he's stopping any police coming on. They've said that they have food and supplies to last as long as it takes. I've tasted P&O food. I suggest they might be out within the hour.
What is interesting about this is that I think it always throws into light things that people don't often consider or remain blissfully ignorant of. For instance, the international nature of the holding company, which actually holds and has been absorbing the losses, £100 million losses.
I think this is very interesting. That there was a Labour MP, the Hull Labour MP, Carl Turner, said that staff on the ship have been treated with utter contempt by P&O, which is owned by Dubai-based logistics giant DP World.
Yeah, who would have done that?
DP World couldn't give a monkeys about the people on the ship. What they can see is the bottom line, which is they're losing £100 million a year because of various things, lack of tourism. Brexit, by the way, has a part to play in this, because I was reading about the fact that there's a lot less freight travelling, particularly between, I think it was Holyhead and Liverpool and Dublin and Liverpool. There's a lot less freight going. So P&O have been losing money, but the holding company couldn't give a monkeys. They they want to get rid of it, and they can get cheap foreign workers.
I might add that the P&O took 10 million from the government to pay for people's wages during the furlough. Right. Also, the holding company has handed out a dividend of 270 million, and I think they sponsored a golf thing for 140 million, and they sponsored F1 for 30 million.
140 million?
140,
Tremendous golf tournament.
Tremendous golf.
Really?
Well, that's what I said. That was the
gold-plated
I would be
golf
interested to know,
tournament.
though, they are saying that there's no dispute over this. The intention is to let these expensive British workers go and then re-employ overseas workers who are cheaper. But where would they come from? Would they be?
Well, they haven't actually. In the articles that I've read, haven't said.
You're saying they're not. You're saying it's not Brexit, because the whole point of Brexit was supposed to be that it would reduce the opportunity of employers to...
No, I'm saying that Brexit had a part to play.
I know what you're saying,
Yeah.
Brexit, but I'm saying the whole idea of Brexit among those who were selling it to us was that it would reduce this kind of thing, that British workers would have less
lose
competition from cheaper overseas.
I suggest it might also be more to do with the unions and hiring non-union members as much. The officers are going to be allowed to reapply for their jobs, I'm assuming, under less favourable conditions. The people who actually work and do like the grunt work, that's not the case for them.
There was also the fact about them being sacked by Zoom as well. A lot of people
meeting or more like a...
No, it was just like a Zoom announcement.
Pre-recorded Zoom announcement, and they were just told. But I was thinking about this. What is the best way to sack someone, by the way? How did they do it in the past? I mean, I'm genuinely asking the question
800 people, I suppose you have to try and sack them all at the same time.
All at the same time? Well, Zoom would probably be... It's not... Listen, it's like being dumped by text or whatever. It's not pleasant. It's crass. Is it callous? Perhaps a little bit, but the whole thing is callous.
I think it's wrong. What I would do if I had 800 people, just off the top of my head, I think you would probably arrange that, make sure that they were on the other end of a Zoom call, and that could be shared, maybe 50 people at a time or whatever, and you have,
Interesting, there's a ticker tape on the bottom of the screen that we've just all been fired, so...
Move on, where else? Friday's Guardian now, and another story that feels more like a sketch than a real-world event. This is phone hoaxer gets through to our Defence Secretary and our Foreign Secretary as well, or Home Secretary as well, was it?
Yeah, it was basically a hoax call. They're claiming to be the Ukrainian Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, was able to get through and speak directly to the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace. Priti Patel apparently had a similar thing happen to her last week. They asked them both about this, Priti Patel and Ben Wallace, and both government ministers expressed solidarity with Ukraine. Well, I'm glad they did
nice
that.
to know,
Because I weren't sure which way they were going until they said that. But this is just some... Is this... Well, I mean, it depends where you look. I mean, some people would say it's the Russians getting involved. It might just be some idiot who's just thinking, I'll have a bit of fun.
It's the easiest accent to fake. Hello, I am ringing from Ukraine.
Well,
to speak
the thing is, if you're Ben Wallace and someone saying the Ukrainian Prime Minister was calling up, you might take that call, especially if they were insistent.
At least have had some kind of code, or they must have known some extension number. They can't just be a general number available to the public.
I don't know. I've never tried.
I was going to sort of Ben there, It can't.
But also,
David
maybe it
Cameron
is.
was hoaxed at one point, wasn't he? A few years ago, I remember he was quite sort of offhand, and he found it all quite funny and amusing. But we have moved to just to be sort of potentially more alarmist about it. We have moved into an era, as you suggested earlier, Russian propaganda, Russian deep fakes of videos.
Sure, but there is no... I mean, Ben Wallace is suggesting that it was a Russian source. Well, that's what he's suggesting. I don't know what evidence there... I don't know if it's like this person said, Ben, you must stop supporting us now and go and help Russia or where. Like, come on. But it is funny, you're right. This whole thing of we're expressing their solidarity with Ukraine. That's great, but it's like putting it now at the end of every tweet, every sentence.
Yeah, we know.
We know. We get it.
I used to do... when I was much younger...
Neither of you are wearing a scarf or a little twisted ribbon or anything of that kind of thing.
I've got it.
Yellow and blue underwear.
Underwear on that as we speak. I don't feel the need to wear anything in public. I used to do hoax calls when I was much younger. Yeah, me and my mates used to get stoned, phoned up people very late at night and say we're making some sort of quiz and you can win a big prize, and the only question is how many D's in match of the day, and they go, we don't know, and then we'd all go da, 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 and we'd all laugh, but we're not phoning up the Defence Secretary in the middle of a war. No.
It's like, well, it's interesting to know that there's a certain amount of human error still at the heart of government. I feel vaguely reassured.
Did you say a certain amount?
A certain amount.
We did.
Okay.
We did say a certain amount.
Friday's Times next. I have zero doubt we're about to clash violently over this next story, gentlemen. Policy responses to the apparently controversial...
Well, who knows? I mean, this story literally could take up the whole show.
Right.
It's been sold in the Times as knife and drug policing is set for reform in the wake of the race report that came out last year. But really, it's much bigger than that. There's 70 recommendations now being implemented by the government from that report. Now, when the report came out, It was hugely criticised. The report was written in the wake of also like the Black Lives Matter movement, but there was a lot of criticism when it came out because people felt like it was saying that England or Britain, Great Britain wasn't racist at all, or that wasn't the reason why. But it was actually a much more nuanced report than that, and it actually also had the strange thing where the person who wrote the report, who is black, was getting abuse from white people going, "You're racist," because of the things that you said. I mean, it was insane when it came to the response.
Very high emotion.
Highly charged, yeah, exactly.
Things have calmed down a little bit on that one.
A little bit, hopefully, but now they're actually, the positive thing is that there were recommendations in that report that make a lot of sense, that could make things fairer.
So pick out one or two? What's
Well, they're talking about, there's a whole bunch, there's literally a whole...
One of them was to try and avoid sending young men to jail for drugs crimes, which
for first-time offences, which is good. They're also talking about doing much more training now for stop and search, which disproportionately affects young black men. So doing better training, making sure that officers are wearing their cameras, so this stuff can be analysed.
As a matter of principle, and I'll ask you the same question, but if reducing stop and search or becoming more conscientious about the rights and wrongs of a certain individual statistically, rather than whether they appear to the police to be a viable suspect. If you lowered that, reduce tensions in the community, but raise the number of knife killings in the capital, as a result,
it's a balance, but this report isn't just about that.
You're saying that's not a...
No, but I don't think one necessarily means the other will happen.
Well, do you think that the police stop and search purely to express their racist instincts, or do you think it's because they actually think, I'm sorry, I know we've stopped 3 black kids already today, but that one looks to me like he's got enough.
They have to have a reasonable suspicion. That's the rule, isn't it, really? Yeah. My friend, I've got a black mate, same age as me, his son gets stopped and searched all the time, hates the police because of it, hates it, and it fosters this feeling of resentment in the community. I understand there are issues with knife crime in the black community. The last time, though, I looked, I don't know the actual figures, but there were quite a few white kids who got stabbed as well. It's not just in the black community.
Well, we go in cycles, don't we? It was the same. Is it Scarman report, was it, after the Brixton riots in about 83 or something like that? And might have been earlier, 81, something like that. And it had the same thing, stop and search, SAS as it was called then. And,
and it's still going on 40 years later.
And they withdraw, and they go down, and then the crime goes up, and they move back.
But it isn't just about, this report wasn't just about knife crime or whatever, or crime. It's about the educational system, what was affecting, because there were nuanced findings in the report, and that didn't suit certain people, where things like people from Nigerian backgrounds, which are recent immigrants, were doing far better educationally than people from Afro-Caribbean and the Windrush generation. And this has to be looked at. If you can't acknowledge it, how do you make these differences to step up?
There's certain things about education. Black children are more likely to be in care and less likely to be adopted. And the review promises a campaign to match children with adoptive families. So that's a positive thing.
Well, I'm sure they would already prefer to do that, wouldn't they? It's probably a question of who's coming forward to
it. Doesn't seem to be working, though, does it?
So acknowledging the problem...
Acknowledging the problem, make it better.
Where you're acknowledging a problem, but are you acknowledging the correct source of the problem? It sounds like you're acknowledging that there's a problem within the institutional...
The source of the problem is the report.
No,
isn't
it's not.
It? Well, no, I'm saying no, but the source of the problem
is conveying information to you. It's not the source of the
Well, sorry,
well,
no,
also
they're
going to increase funding to the Equality and Human Rights Commission. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they're doing. It doesn't seem like some sort of toothless thing that they just did last year to make people happy. It looks like they actually want to make a difference. The question is, will this stuff be implemented, and how well will it be implemented?
And will any of it be remotely effective?
Well,
Friday's Independent next, and Ian, this is did not want you to be shortchanged on the half-baked race-baiting nonsense front, so I've given you Sadiq Khan is saying that climate change is a social justice issue.
Interestingly enough, I have a bit more agreement with you on this story. Okay. The headline, Sadiq Khan said, climate crisis is a racial justice issue, as black and Asian Londoners most affected. Basically, he said the climate crisis should be a wake-up call to people of colour in London to understand this is also a matter of racial injustice. Well, it's a matter of poverty and inequality, essentially, and that would affect people in ethnic minority communities. They're 50% more likely to face the highest climate risk in London, including flooding, exposure to toxic air, heat risk and limited access to green space. because those are the poorer areas.
Yes,
I mean, essentially, if you're rich, you can go and live up on a hill in Wimbledon and have a green space around you, and that's great. Most people in ethnic minorities don't have that choice. To then take that and say that is a racial justice issue, I think...
It's a bit of a leap, isn't it?
It's a bit inflammatory, I think. I don't think it's helpful. He's saying it actually it makes him more determined to tackle it. Well, whatever works for you, Sadiq, because the climate crisis is definitely real and it's definitely happening, contrary to what people sometimes say on this station. But I don't know if it's helpful, the language is used.
It seems to me, I don't know what you think, Josh, it seems to me to have imported and then reduced down like a fine sauce.
Well,
think of a sort of global observation that the global south, as they're often called.
Yeah, that's because of temperature. Yeah, absolutely. And those countries affected, India and the countries along the equator, of course they are being disproportionately affected. Then just to kind of bring that back to the UK is ridiculous. As you know, as Ian says, it's about economics. Just like the last story that we did, that's what it comes down to.
And they have also said, and I'm not a climate change denialist, but they have also said in that story, I saw a couple of extraordinary paragraphs, but it said last year the climate crisis, you know, London was impacted to an extraordinary extent with flash floods and heat waves. Last year, London wasn't exposed to extreme weather events any more than any other year in my lifetime. There's always been the potential for a bit of high wind. I remember that storm that we were promised. I rushed back down to Brighton in order to watch the seafront burst when there was a bit of gravel on the promenade. I mean, they just overdo it the whole time. I think
is it not happening more often? I don't know. I can't. It doesn't seem that extreme here.
The independent report was definitely exaggerated. Anyway, that's it for part one. Coming up, an exploration into anti-English sentiment. Ooh, why my nephew needs to start paying for his own Netflix, and squeaky bum time for tech bosses. We'll see you in a couple of moments. Thank you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. With me are Ian Stone and Josh Howie. So far, we are finding surprising amounts of common ground between us, gentlemen, aren't we? Let's see how we go from here. A story to stir GB News' partisan interest, at least, Josh. This is humiliation for the BBC.
Yeah, so the BBC are paying substantial damages for Princess Diana's interview with Martin Bashir. They're paying those damages to her private secretary, Patrick Jefferson. So the weird thing is, this article in the Metro doesn't actually say how that had a negative impact. I had to sort of Google some other stuff.
Did you? To get to the bottom of it?
To get to the bottom of what happened. But essentially, it seems like Bashir mocked up these statements, showed them to Princess Anna's brother, and one of them seemed to be saying, like your private secretary is accepting money from other sources to sort of spy on you, and I think that obviously had a massive impact on him from that point.
Yeah.
It's weird that this article didn't tell you that.
And there's a suggestion that she may have died without ever knowing the truth about that.
I'm sure, yeah. If it's only coming out now, which just seems very sad. He was her private secretary, I think, for 8 years. So that is sad. He's got some money, justifiably so, and he's given that money away straight to charity to one of in Princess.
He seems like a decent chap, I have to say. Yeah. As far as the Bashir interview goes altogether, he obviously was extremely dodgy and dubious in the story he patched up in order to convince her to do it. Is there any suggestion that she wouldn't have done it if
I think that's how he got access to her, via her brother. Right. That's the idea. Yeah. And then he sort of managed to get this interview. Whether she would have said anything different during that interview, probably not.
Do you remember it, Ian? The interview? I remember it very clearly.
I remember it happening. I didn't watch it because I try and avoid royal stories whenever I possibly can because I don't care about them. But I remember the fallout from it was enormous. There were 3 of us in the marriage and all that stuff.
Loads of clips, and with her wearing that extraordinary sort of heavy eyeliner and
the whole thing. It was all part of the drama, and everyone was carried along by it. But it
felt like it opened a new chapter in British TV journalism, which I think to some extent you could say Harry and Meghan in front of Oprah Winfrey was a sort of continuation of that. Obviously, that was taking it back to its natural home.
But I have some sympathy with the boys and the way that and I think it's not just the press. I think it's the public as well. Everyone bought into that rubbish, so that when. You know, the reason that everyone was grieving as much was because I think they felt a certain amount of guilt for buying into it all, for every time she was on the front page of a newspaper or she was on some BBC interview. Whereas I was walking about going, what the hell is wrong with you people? You didn't know this. Oh, one thing, by the way, the guy's a commander. That's a great title, isn't it? Is it a naval title?
Right, Commander Bond.
It's Commander Bond. It's a naval title, though, isn't it? Right.
Time's next, and Finland looks increasingly like the place to go for maximum summer sun. And indeed, plenty of cheap air conditioning now. They have taken a very positive step, in my view.
Nuclear, they've basically decided they've built Europe's first nuclear plant for 15 years. And assuming they can work out what to do with the waste and they don't blow us all up, which apparently they're much safer than they used to be, I'm all for, because then we wouldn't have to rely on Russian oil and gas.
Absolutely. It's always a question of payoffs and compromises, isn't it, in the real world? And I think nuclear power at the moment looks like a pretty good deal. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a weird, of my generation growing up 80s, 90s, nuclear was just bad.
Nuclear bombs.
But then obviously nuclear power gets pushed in with that, and of course because you had Chernobyl and you had what happened in Japan relatively recently. Sellafield, so these are things. But if it is safer now, it makes sense.
And they know what to do with the waste.
It's not necessarily that it's safer now. It's actually when you take a step back and you go, it was always the safest. Even with all those catastrophes, actually the number of deaths was tiny compared to the number of deaths that come inevitably.
But it's the potential for
we all watched the drama. Chernobyl was absolutely brilliant, and it could have gone much worse. Let's be fair. I agree. Listen, I hope it all goes well, and I'm glad they're doing it as well. And I think, I've been on this show before, and we've talked about every house having a mini nuclear reactor in the house.
Yeah, well, that's when they get fusion happening, isn't it? That's when it really does become safe, when this fusion is available. That might happen in our
Great. If they can work it out, I'm all for it.
I think Finland they're an excellent country to take this on and to lead from the front, because they are virtually unbesmirched by any other country. Do you know what I mean? They've never been. Their hands are clean.
And far enough away from us if it all goes wrong.
Well, they have everything from
we'll be okay.
The best tractor races right through to the best education system. They're a great.
They're happy. They're on the happiness index. They're number one.
They are happy for 6 months of the year.
Well, there's this weird myth that they all commit suicide in the long dark winter. It isn't true apparently.
Have you been out in Finland in the winter? Have you seen the desperation?
We've been in the Finland.
They're drunk. Oh my!
Athletics from Helsinki.
Javelin, and rally driving. It makes you happen.
Friday's Telegraph. Next, finally, someone in Scotland has recognised the real victim.
Finally, the English. We are gonna finally. Is this the first time that English people have been the victims ever? For hundreds of years or whatever, since the Roman Empire, yeah, exactly. So it says Scotland targets anti-English racism. No, it's a council in Scotland, Moray Council, they've adopted a official definition of Islamophobia, and then at the same time, the Tory council was like, well, also, wait a minute, let's also check out Anglophobia as well, and God forbid that you are a English Muslim, because then you're really going to get it double both barrels.
Oh, yeah, then maybe they
that's
each other, I don't know.
Islamo-Anglophobia, if that's it. But look, you guys, we gig in Scotland. We're up in Scotland quite a lot. When I went to Scotland first time, it was a real eye-opener about how much people hated. I was like, English people. I was like, was it just me?
Play up the Jewish thing instead.
Yeah, I was like,
when Canadians walk around.
No, I just couldn't believe the hatred. It was amazing. It was visceral.
It is true. I went to the Loch Lomond Festival in 1979, and we're in the tent. All we could hear was "kill the English, burn the English." And we thought, well, we'll stay in the tent.
First time I was ever attacked by a complete stranger was in Scotland. It was in Dumfries on a camping site. We just fell into a conversation about who our favourite guitarists were, and I said mine was Jimi Hendrix. I don't know why that angered him, but anyway, I was literally kicked in the head.
It was.
It might not have been because of who your favourite guitarist was.
I don't think it was. I think he was looking for a casus belli.
I mean, I've also been to Scotland-England games, and maybe there are different rules that apply in sporting, in the sporting arena, particularly a football match between the old enemy, but England, the old enemy. But yeah, I've suffered a little bit in Scotland, but
I have to say, as a performer in Scotland at this Edinburgh Festival, I've never had anything.
Yeah, but it's full of English people coming up from London and watching.
Yeah, and I'd say Glasgow are the best comedy audiences in the world.
Glaswegian taxi drivers are the friendliest bunch of guys as well. If you get one from the station, you cannot avoid falling into conversation. I've never had any kind of weirdness or hostility.
So is this a myth? I mean,
no, it's definitely not a myth.
I think
it's definitely not a myth.
There's some grievance being nurtured in places, maybe where we're out of earshot. I don't know, but
I remember going to a Germany-England match like in '96, and everybody supporting Germany. I just couldn't.
Andy
couldn't
Murray
believe it.
got into trouble, didn't he, for saying when they asked anyone but the English, and he said it as a joke, didn't he?
But it's not
it's
a joke.
It's a well-established joke enough, Ian, I'm tempted to make a pun about this, the inadvisability of pinning jumped-up charges on a basketball player. Do you get it? But it's a little more serious.
You said when you tempted, you actually made a pun,
I wanted to immediately apologise as well, or put it into scare quotes, because I wouldn't make a joke about something.
You know what, if you're going to do it, a woman, Brittany Griner, is a US basketball star, is in detention in Russia. It sounds like she has to do 100 lines.
Exactly.
I will not bring drugs into Russia. 100 times like you can go home now. Anyway, it's been extended till May. She was basically flew in to Moscow in possession of vape cartridges containing hashish oil. I read down this story. I mean, she's going to get another 2 months in jail. Right. She's 6'9".
Yeah,
I mean, my God,
but it's not just 2 months. It's 2 months until they start doing the state. It could be 10 years in jail.
You know what? Why bring drugs into a country? What are you doing?
Ridiculous.
What are you doing?
Like a relaxant, really.
He says on his hashish oil.
Sorry, I'm all for people taking hashish oil with them and using it if they want, but don't take it into a country. Yeah. It's just.
She should have watched Midnight Express. Is it Midnight Express?
Midnight Express.
Yeah.
You know what? It's just ridiculous. I remember going to Malaysia years ago. I was travelling overland from Thailand, and there were always those things about the death penalty in Malaysia if you bring drugs in. And all these signs. And my mother was phoning me saying, make sure nobody puts any drugs in your bag without you noticing. Chance to be a fine thing.
See, my parents were putting the drugs in my bag. In the home,
Kuala Lumpur. Have a nice time.
They were all known as the Hanoi Hilton and things like that, weren't they? The jails.
The jails.
Latest,
but it was serious. And like you say, Midnight Express, although it was...
That was Turkey, wasn't it?
That was Turkey, but the guy got 30 years and he had to escape.
He did. Yeah. Great soundtrack, though, when he got out. Yeah. Fantastic. That was the thing to drive.
Ennio Morricone. Giorgio Moroder.
I do like... There is a funny thing where this Miss Kaligina, someone who works for the prison service to sort of point out that everything's OK in Russia, basically said that she'd visited Griner and said the only issue was that the prison beds were too short. I think she might have more issues than...
6'9".
6 foot, yeah.
Almost any bed she's ever encountered.
But she might just have an issue that she doesn't speak Russian. That I think it's going to be pretty tough for her.
I'd imagine that Russian prisons don't make their beds sort of made to measure for their prisoners.
For their journalists.
Prokrastitsky. I'm sorry, that's a... I've tried to...
You've had an education, you know that.
Greek myth and...
Please.
Oh, yeah.
He had some hashish oil before the...
Stretch them out.
Before tonight.
That is it for part 2. Folks, watch the adverts, buy the products and services. We'll see you shortly. Thank you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, and I'm joined by Ian Stone and Josh Howie. The Daily Star now, Josh, with something approximating to news.
This is terrifying.
Right.
This is. I mean, I know there are people dying in the world and racial inequality and all the. But this is the greatest impact on me, and I imagine quite a few people out there. Netflix. Looks like they could be changing their password policy. At the moment, they're pretty open about you sharing with different households. It's meant to be your own household, but you share it with other people. A lot of people do.
Is this right? I mean, I don't really understand. Yeah. I literally don't do this.
Well, there's this new thing called Netflix.
Yeah.
And
I do the password. My daughter set it up. I can watch it on my phone. So we
okay, yeah. So you got So that you got a family thing. But I have been borrowing for the last few years. A friend of mine,
Wow.
Because my dad wouldn't let me have his one.
How many people can borrow on the same account?
Well, I think like loads, really. They're loads.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's affecting them. It's what was the word? Impacting our ability to invest in great new
so
TV
they're
and films.
making less money.
They're making less
money.
money.
But it was part of.
To be fair, I mean this amount.
Yeah, no, but there was actually a clever policy to be open about it because it got more people watching it.
Right.
Then they pull them in, and then they do what they're going to do now, which is say.
Remember who was the fellow with the weird that comedian with the sort of medieval bowl cut? What was his name? Very tall.
I ignore people who have hair.
Their weird voice.
Yeah.
So he said he made money on a lemonade stand because he would sell the first cup was only 5 cents, but the second cup was $1 because that had the antidote.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. That is how you do it, right?
That's it. So they've got us addicted. It's not happening immediately in the UK, but they're starting to push this stuff in different countries around the world.
Right.
So
this is going to affect everyone. I mean, everyone. It's not a large amount of money, but it's still.
Yeah.
I've got one kid in college and one kid living abroad. They're both using my Netflix account as long as.
That's allowed.
The rules is a bit of a grey area as to whether it is
household locations.
They do live at ours sometimes, but there are often occasions when it happens with Spotify as well. By the way, when I want to play music, oh no, it's being listened to on my son's headphones.
Can I ask you, by the way, how familiar is this tonight? When you go onto the Netflix homepage, there's 4 people in my family, and we all have a little square, right? We all have a little avatar. Ours been selected for some reason from Stranger Things. Do you remember Stranger Things?
Oh yeah.
So my wife is represented by the mother, who was
Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder, yeah. My daughter is the young sort of. and I am some kind of weird monster with
I see that.
You didn't select this.
No,
though, did you?
exactly.
Well,
is this a
their
dad
prerogative.
thing around the country that they're a dad?
No, I think
Well,
you're slightly out there, to be honest with you.
Our family are called the Grifters on our friends.
Oh, really?
You're worried because you've got 5 kids as well, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're concerned about that because in about 10 years' time, when they're all living in different places using your Netflix
I'm concerned about it now because that's how we entertain them. I'm going to have to parent them if it gets cancelled.
It's a pension in itself, so you'll be all right. Friday's Times next, and this is one of those little stories that seems small and whimsical now, but might just come back to haunt us once we're fully engaged in the war with machines, I suspect.
This is the 4-day week, is it?
Yeah.
Dozens of UK firms are about to trial 4-day working weeks.
Oh, no, that wasn't that.
Oh, no, it wasn't that.
Sorry. That's what I've got here. Yeah, UK firms.
This is Estee
Oh, Leicester. Oh, right,
well, we've
sorry.
skipped one.
Sorry, Josh, that's you. Estee Lauder.
Yes, so this is as scary, although the previous story is scary. Have you seen the movie, George Clooney movie, Up in the Air? And it's basically him travelling all over America, and he basically has to fire people. Sacking people. And then they're bringing in a system where they would essentially sack people over Zoom.
Yeah.
So this is
like
the
next... did today.
Yeah, well, exactly like they did today. The next step is basically being sacked by an algorithm, where these people working for Estee Lauder were interviewed, and this sort of computer analysed the footage and just said, yeah, no, we don't want this person. We're going to get rid. And that's what happened. So and
they already had a job. This was more like an assessment.
Yeah, and they had an assessment. They were invited to reapply, but actually they said no. We don't. We actually don't.
How do you feel about that?
Doesn't mean the algorithm's wrong.
No. The funny thing is, there's been a lot of evidence to suggest when you're hiring, algorithms are much more likely to get it right because they're much less susceptible to little, foibles.
Charm.
Like, oh, you remind me of me when I was.
No, but also racial bias. There's none of that.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking at the facts. You're looking at the statistical likelihood of that.
Well, in this case, what was interesting was that it said because the job is to put on makeup, but this person had to describe how they did it, and they weren't good at doing that.
No.
And that so if your verbal skills are not as good as your...
there's one thing that everyone has discovered is there's money in being able to describe putting makeup on. Now, that's basically how Instagram runs, isn't it?
Very strange. It's very strange. They kept this, one of these women, they pasted the same sentence about algorithms and artificial intelligence and this tiering bucket of 15,000 data points, and I still don't know what all that means. And I have sympathy there.
Bucket.
But we're talking about algorithms. I mean, when in medicine... Don't computers get better results in terms of...
They are unbelievable what they're capable of. There are machines now which can look at your bone structure, your chest cavity or what have you, rib cage, and they can determine the race of the person, the self-reported race of the person being x-rayed, which previously no human surgeon had ever thought there was any distinction at all.
Yes, but there's also... but it's also about diagnosis as well.
No, that's what I mean. Their degree of accuracy and diagnosis and analysis is off the scale, so much.
So I think it's unfortunate for these women to be sacked by an algorithm. It doesn't... It's not particularly pleasant,
Not nice to be the canary in the coal mine, but it's not going to go away.
No.
Next from The Sun, a story concerning supposed character traits that feel a little bit more like a selection of adult after-dinner chocolates or something. The dark empath.
Are you a dark empath?
Yeah.
Scientists.
It sounds a bit sexy.
It does. Scientists reveal new most dangerous personality type. Basically, empathy can be broken up into 3 categories: cognitive, effective, and compassionate. Right. So you can describe someone's feelings without necessarily sensing them.
Right.
You can feel the emotions, and then you have a degree of compassion. Right. If you combine those traits with things like Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism.
Not the compassion one, just the cognitive one.
Just the cognitive one. Essentially, if you're both sensitive and also a bit of a bastard, you can cause a lot of trouble.
I know the dark triad. That's Machiavellianism, narcissism, and
psychopathy.
And that's quite famous because there are sort of men's rights gurus who try and teach you how to sort of harness the dark triad and use it to your own benefit.
For goodness sake.
It's quite
for goodness sake. But the point is that people can be manipulated by this stuff if you are sensitive to their feelings.
Also then, because then you've got the final missing part.
I read this and I finally felt understood.
Yeah.
I see that.
I was like, they've got, this gets me.
Oh, yes.
Palest triad I've ever seen.
And it's dangerous.
I want you to think I'm the palest triad. That's my empathy at work there.
Brilliant. Do you know any dark triad people? I was trying to think. I mean,
when you talk about comics, with loads of dark triads.
Well, there's plenty of narcissism, Machiavellianism and psychopathy. Yeah, there's probably one or two as well.
I think of Russell Brand as quite narcissistic, and I mean, he's done very well, which is Machiavellian, but I don't think he's a psychopath. Do you think he's a psychopath?
No, I don't think he's a psychopath. He's sat there with a rubber plant behind him.
He's an empath, isn't he? I think he actually feels the pain.
He wants to hug
That's what it said in this article, is that a lot of the people who are like that do feel and have self-loathing because of it.
I mean, you've got to say Jimmy Carr has got to be #1 candidate, hasn't he, for the original Dark Triad?
But then he's a very charming guy. He's very nice.
You want to get into individuals. No, I really don't, to be honest with you, but we all have our views about certain individuals, but it doesn't...
fascinating. I mean, like, a great Bond villain has all three of those, obviously, doesn't he?
Yeah, but not the empathy, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's what's... Yeah.
Good poker player. What was his name in Casino Royale?
The shift.
James Bond.
Yeah.
James Bond. I knew it was one of them. Yeah.
Times once more. Denmark's still pursuing its policy of banning all smoking, though presumably with an exception made for bacon.
Yeah, and the Times actually did a better one. They aim to stub out smoking in the next generation. So anyone, I think, born after 2010 will now, they're going to basically every year raise, which is a similar thing they did in New Zealand, raise the age of being able to buy cigarettes so that you can't buy...
above 18 or something.
No, they can. That's the whole point. It's going to be like illegal for you. That's the whole point of this article.
At the age of 30?
Well, no, at the age of 64, there'll be like 64-year-olds being asked for their ID. Sorry, mate, 60. You've got to be 65.
We've got to be adults like adults, or ban it all
but I think the idea...
deaths a year.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, well, if you want to ban it altogether, but you can't be saying to 35
well, they are
you're
trying to ban it.
not old enough to smoke.
They're going to restrict the selling of it. I think this is a great thing, certainly because stopping people, you know, who really starts smoking in their 30s?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you. Keep people off it. I mean, the smoking companies, the tobacco
there's no
companies have known
upside
for a long
to smoking. And there's also, this includes vape products and everything. I think I've never smoked. I hate it so much. I was so happy when they banned smoking in bars and stuff in this country. It was because, you know, you come home and you stink from pigs and stuff.
I agree with you. I didn't used to like the smell. But on the other hand, I think there's a certain amount of personal liberty. But I do think now that you can extinguish the need for tobacco and just go straight to vaping products, if you really want that nicotine hit, then, you know, there seems to be very, very few legitimate reasons to maintain a
Except you look like a
tobacco.
proper idiot.
Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? If you're willing to go through that, good
I know
luck to you.
people who started on